8:32 p.m. Due notice having been made, posted. Roll call of members present here in the room tonight. Starting Mr. Ankle.
Robert Ankle.
Joey Gallagher.
Hollis Campus.
Julie Ramos Gagliardi.
Steve Cataract.
Susan Brelsford.
Stephanie Field.
Jeff Schoonover.
Lindsay Alvarez.
Laurie Day.
And myself, Rich Fenster. The first order we have here is we have a request from one of our members, Mr. Pierce, to remotely participate in our meeting as he's away in Wyoming. The building committee has not taken a position or had this circumstance before. So after consultation by one of our members with the State for Open Meeting and Ethics laws has recommended that in order to allow remote participation, that we have a motion made and voted on with a majority vote would allow remote participation.
I'll make a motion to allow for remote participation.
Second.
Okay, I have wording of a motion
Oh, okay, sorry.
that I will suggest. So,
All right,
I would entertain a motion to authorize remote participation by members of the Somerset Berkley Building Committee not present at this meeting location, provided, however, that the absent members and all persons present at the meeting location are clearly audible to each other, and provided further that a quorum of the body, including the chair, are present at the meeting location. And then it references General Law C 30A, Section 20D. So that's the motion. Thank you.
Second.
Second. Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, thank you. So tonight our business is review and consider acceptance or non-acceptance of the MSBA draft audit. A copy of this was submitted to the members. We have a new copy that came out this afternoon. I'm sorry, Rick, this one did not get to you. It's a minor modification, and we can note the change as we walk through it, right? So I think maybe the clearest, Mike, you want to kind of walk through the document?
Yeah.
Rick, just for the record, the document we're referencing is dated September 19th, 2017, and the only change is on one of the later pages that Mike will identify when we get there.
Great. So I think ultimately I maybe just start with this is kind of the document we've been waiting on for some time from the MSBA. So Dan and their audit team have gone through all the costs that we've submitted to date through the ProPay reimbursement program and analyzed if there are duplicate submissions or things in the wrong code or over budget or had some questions on. This report is a result of that review. Prior to doing the audit, or maybe alongside it, Lindsay and myself sat down and sent them a document of where we stood, where we thought we stood with the budget and how things looked in ProPay, to kind of allow them, as they were going through it, to say if there was an overage or something showing in ProPay, you know, whether it was a duplicate submission, this invoice was submitted twice, which is why this budget is showing as a over budget item. So we went line by line through each budget prior to or while the audit was going on, and this report is a result of that action taken by the SBA. So this was received, the first round of it was received last week. The first page is really just a cover letter kind of explaining the project and a little bit of the time frame. The second page really outlines the approval process that they're requesting the building committee take, or the committee take, and the time frames with that. So, you know, we have been in pretty steady communication with the MSBA about the audit report. So if there, for any reason, a slippage was anticipated from the 10 business days, they have unofficially said, you know, as long as you give us notice, we're not going to, we just need to let them know, essentially. This 10 business days is really just to hold us to their schedule because they have resources aligned to this as well. So we don't anticipate needing more 10 business days to at least respond to this, but that's all the second page really demonstrating is their time frame. And you know, the intent of this review cycle now is ultimately to get on the board meeting if it is accepted at this meeting today, which would be in October, the 25th. So The next page you see is the actual form that will need to be signed and executed. There are 2 boxes that you could check when you send this back to the MSBA. One would be that you've reviewed it and that you do not take objection to any of the costs that they find ineligible or determining ineligible, and are in agreement with the total reimbursement amount outlined in the draft audit report that the district will be receiving. The second box is if there is a question or a comment that we feel that may be some costs found ineligible, that we have documentation and reasoning to justify it becoming eligible, in which case we would check that box, return this, and then follow another set of parameters to send documentation to them, allow them time to review the documentation and make a determination whether or not they're going to alter their first stab at reimbursement. I've asked, just for clarity, if we were to select that box, what that would do for a timing standpoint. It's not necessarily the fact that if you do not accept it tonight, you will not get on the October meeting, but they're not willing to commit that we will still make it to the meeting. So it's still possible. It's not really a black and white answer, I guess, but it would definitely complicate things in getting onto the October board. So just that's kind of where that box leads you, but we can go back to that because ultimately the meat of the audit is further down in the report. The next page we kind of looked at before, but just as a side note, well, the next page, I'm sorry, this is the checklist for items required for closeout, and you can see that there is a note halfway down the list for designer contract amendments. Those were sent to them right after receiving the initial report on the 12th. So those were, I'm fairly certain those were already previously sent, but we resent them already. So they should have those in their hands. So that's been addressed. The last 2 items on that list with ours next to them are the audit report, which we just looked at, which would be required for execution, and a sources and uses form, which is essentially just summarizing the audit report in a 1-pager. Accepting the audit report would allow you to fill out the required sources and uses form. So that's just the checklist, and the next few pages are the actual audit report. So scrolling through page 2, just a description of the project with some of the MSBA's caps outlined for reimbursement. And then you get the next page 3 is really the summary of where we stand with the total project budget. So if you're starting at the top on page 3, the PFA amendment that was voted on in November of 2012 by the MSBA had a total project budget of $82,383,618. These next 2 items are, the next 2 items are items at that time when we had that original agreement with the MSBA were determined to be ineligible scope. So those next 2 items, when we had that first agreement, and there was the total project budget, and the next 2 columns over were the costs that they were deeming ineligible based on what we planned on doing of this project. That's what those next 2 items represent. So of the $82 million, the MSBA at that time stated that they would participate in 72,688. So then the next lines down really go into additional scope exclusion. So that next to the $967,000 kind of tells you what that's summarizing, and that's related to change orders that were processed and deemed ineligible, leaving the $71,720,000 left as a basis of grant. The next section is in terms of actual costs submitted to MSBA for reimbursement. The 79,976,119, it's a kind of crucial note, that is inclusive of 372,216 duplicate invoices. So it's not a true number of what we've actually spent on the project. The true value of what the invoice actually paid is 372,000 less than that. But because there was $360,000 worth of invoices that were submitted to ProPay twice, so it's kind of skewing that value. So, and that I think Rich pointed out in his email is fairly close to what we had reported at our last building committee meeting in terms of how much the committee had spent to date.
Yeah, we had by the cash flow document, our December 12th meeting, a total of 79,603,903. So it's a slight variation from. No, we had 79,169. I'm pulling wrong. My notes wrong here. I think that this number here is 79,603,903 in this document. If you net out the duplication of invoices, versus we had 79,598,501. So it's about a $5,400 variance in numbers. So.
And I was hoping that before this meeting I could kind of really dig through my budget and how I was reporting that, kind of pull out from what was submitted to MSBA. Exactly, I was hoping there was like one invoice I could pull, but I was not able to find that in the time frame. But I think ultimately it's fairly close.
Yeah, if you go in percentages, that's pretty.
Do we have to pay the ineligible costs?
So we pay the ineligible costs, you just don't get reimbursed on the ineligible costs.
So on that line there, it includes the duplicate cost, but it also includes this 5,700
Yes. Yep.
difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we don't know what that is.
Right.
I mean, all the costs that were submitted to ProPay are, Lindsay and I went through it, they are all actual costs that were processed for this project, that were submitted for this project. Whether or not my Excel sheet has a rounding issue that's gone, so there could be something wrong with that sheet that's reporting it, but ultimately the checks cut by the district to this project equal that minus the.
Minus 72.
Just to be clear, we didn't pay any duplicate invoices. They
No.
just got submitted.
Yep, they got submitted more than once for reimbursement, which is why.
So are they also included in C? You might have just said that to me. So did they determine in that 10 million, did the MSBA determine in the 10 million that the 372,000 were ineligible because they were duplicate?
Yes,
Okay.
so it's adding them in the top and then it's taking them out again.
Okay.
So that 10 million is shown. I think that is a line of what? Yeah, 10,662.
Well, in the notes below,
Yeah.
it says 736,000, but I'm assuming that of those 736,000, somewhere in that group is also the 372,000 of duplicate costs. Oh, no, it's actually below. Yes, indeed. I see it now. So it's still subtracted out.
Yeah, it's added in the top and then subtracted out to get to the net basis grant of the 68,922,813.
Now, Rick, for your information, the copy that you have there under total facilities grant calculation based on final cost submitted, the top number there for final project cost submitted is the same in the new version. The cost scope items excluded from total facility grant is the same. The ineligible costs excluded from total facilities grant changed from the original 751,345 to a new number of 729,328. And then corresponding things change below that, yes.
So ultimately where that shakes out, when you take the basis of grant by the reimbursement rate of the district, is the MSBA grant amount of $46,509,114. So the bottom section of this summary is summarizing what the MSBA has paid out to date and what's remaining. So the $46,509,000, the MSBA has reimbursed $44,716,000 of cost. They reimbursed that amount to the district. So the balance remaining after the audit is complete and approved at the board would be $1.7 million, almost 1.8.
Have we done the final borrowing for the amount that the district is responsible for?
No, we were waiting for the final audit to figure out the amount we would need to bond.
So up to now, that amount you just binded to cover the invoices due, and now you'll do the final borrowing to cover the bind? Have any idea what amount that is?
It's gonna be, about 2.4 million, we had to wait for the final audit to because we had to bond we had to short-term borrow the 5% that we were still gonna have to do, and then we didn't wanna do the long-term until we got this audit report, so.
So now our original amount that we negotiated with Unibank is gonna kick in at that final borrowing, and that's it for the duration of the 20 years?
Yes,
Okay. We got 2 years under our belt on this, right?
we've already started 2 years out of,
Right.
Our first one was 25 years, and the 3 after that was 20 years, if I need to.
Okay, any questions on this page?
The next page kind of summarizes a lot of the values you saw on previous pages. So if you remember our budget sheets, the categories of each individual block of costs, I should say, match up with the first column. So feasibility study, administration, architecture and engineering, construction, they kind of match the groupings of our budget sheet. So these are the totals of those values that we've been showing to date. This first, the PFA bid budget to the right of that is what we talked about as what was originally determined and eligible when we first signed up with the MSBA. The next column, based on all the budget revisions that we processed to reallocate funds from one category to another, these are how they were determined in terms of eligibility. So you can see the biggest swing is in construction change orders. There was $881,000 of ineligible change orders processed. And then the owner's contingency funds a lot of the AE fees and the administration section, which was Skansky's contract. So those items were the two big hits in terms of reimbursement.
That's a little bit more than 1% of the total cost of the project. 881,000. Change.
There's a summary of the change orders further on.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think it's 1.2 is where we ended up shaking out.
Pretty much in line with what we signed on for when we went through the negotiations.
So the final budget is just where all those budget lines stand after you make those transfers. And then you'll see the total cost submitted, which is what was actually sent to propay in each of those summary categories. And each one of these headings in the first column summarizes about a grouping of propay codes. So there's 4 codes in the first section, so there's a lot more breakdown in propay for each of these, but this is just a summary. And the second last column is ineligible, and then the last column shows the basis of rank, which backs up that $68,922 you see on the previous page. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
Just again to note the changes from the September 12th document. On this line here, Rick is under architecture and engineering. The total ineligible cost has been reduced to $681,468. On the second to last column, and then the last column is at 2,625,613 for the basis for final total facilities grant. And then I think going down to the bottom line here on that, where it previously read 68,907,96, it's now 68,922,813. And then the last being the total facilities grant is 46,509,114 versus the original number, which is 46,494,257.
That's 67, oh, I'm sorry, John. Did you say the same thing? That's 67.48%. That's quite an achievement. Reimbursed after everything that we went through with SBA and how they were cutting back on what they were reimbursing. Wow, I didn't think it was going to be anywhere near that.
I mean, the 67 is the rate that we agreed upon with them, and you guys did take advantage of many of
The rest of the incentives.
the incentives,
Yeah.
regionalization with the model school, those are points that you guys got. Lead points.
Chips, all that kind
Yep.
of stuff, yeah.
So you got the maximum chips points, you got the 2 additional points there. So when you, this project did very well with the above the line cap that the MSBA was by the decisions you guys made both to regionalize and with the model school program. Model school program points are no longer out there for districts. So the model school program is still in effect. I can't remember what board meeting it was exactly, but projects that come into the pipeline at a certain point now don't get those points anymore. So that reimbursement is no longer available for districts. So ultimately, that 67 points is really good. At the end of the day. That's
And that's on all eligible.
eligible costs, correct. And I think no, we can do it here. I think ultimately, we had always been shooting for around 60%. I think we ended up shaking out, if my math, I think it's like 58.5 or 58.6 of total
Cost.
in, you know, a big, we've talked about this in previous meetings, when we had the bids come in, and we had a lot of discussions around the site costs and the cost of the alternates being higher than we had estimated, which kind of took the district share and shifted it a little bit, based on how the bids came in. So we were fighting an uphill battle from Jump Street. So still ultimately,
Yeah, I think with this last change, we're right around 58.5.
Compared to other projects you've been involved in, how did we do overall?
I think right now on projects we've started in other communities, we said on a baseline here, we were trying to stay within 7% of the ultimate rate, or 7.5%. We use 10% typically as a baseline. So if your reimbursement rate on eligible cost is 67%, on projects we're moving forward with now, based on how a lot of things shake out and unknowns, we're early on saying, we can anticipate 57%, just because of the whole cost for your effective rate. We hope to improve on that. We hope that we can make good decisions and all be weary of ineligible cost. But I think that's pretty consistent with what the MSBA expects and that they've seen on their projects, is right around 10%. So I think anything better than 10 is good.
Now you just look at the reimbursement rates. I've seen the paper for some other communities that are going for schools and they're in the 50s. It's out the gate.
Yeah.
Never mind what you lose for the eligible piece. So
Yep.
you're in a good spot.
I think ultimately it was like 14 points, if I remember right, what we got in incentives.
Coming was everything. They don't have those points.
So that's page 4. Page 5 really gets into the pages 5 through 14. Really get into the details with what was determined ineligible. I think we can you feel free to ask any questions you might have on these, but if you go to page 14, there's a summary of these costs, and it kind of buckets them in different categories. It might be, happy to answer any questions on any of these in particular, but I might be able to look at this easier just by going through the summary. So this A that you see at the very top of that table, this is what really had changed from the first report that we'd received to the second report. Is everyone on the same page?
No.
We pulled that one.
Pull it out of my copy there.
So on the first version we had received from the MSBA, it was $22,070, I want to say. 40 was in this first category of invoices submitted with insufficient backup. So we quickly turned around, found the invoice, and sent them the invoice along with the backup for consideration, which is what resulted in this new one getting sent out late this afternoon. So that's why we've seen, an additional $22,000 of eligible costs and 15 grand or so in grant. So that first category, it's $23 balance. I'm not exactly. That could be around too. I'm not sure where that stands. But the next few are maintenance, repair, actual work. So a lot of these might have been work that we kind of did after the fact to kind of, I don't want to say improve, but maybe decisions that were made to kind of put additional things.
Make adjustments.
Yeah. Duplicate costs, so those we've already talked about, those were just submitted a couple times. Legal fees, we had always talked about those being ineligible. There were some early on where, in particular, when we're writing a contract with Bacon Magazine, some legal fees involved with that. The next few are police details, sales tax, and eligible for the MSBA. So there's miscellaneous invoices included in the backup that total at $169,000. Travel expenses, that is a categorically ineligible expense through the MSBA. And in looking at the backup, it seems that almost all of that cost was associated with our testing of bricks. So it was their travel time got included, and it was pulled out on almost all of their invoices. So it's not something that they would have paid for in any case. So the next section is that 736, which has backup on one of the previous pages we looked at for the BRRs. So that is a summary of the middle column on page 4 and the costs associated with that. Scope exclusions ineligible for PFA amendments and BRR. So the PFA amendment is what changed when we got the bid. So that's where a lot of those funds kind of lie, with site work and the alternates. The costs related to alternates and other ineligible scopes, so that those are the design services related to the track field sessions, which again we were all. Yep. The next W, the section called W, is the FF&E allowance. It's another one we were aware of when making decisions about what type of FF&E and computer equipment to purchase, that there were caps and that we were going over those caps. And the last section was the rebates from National Grid and Liberty, which were received, and MSBA's position on rebates is that they're not reimbursable. They look at it as, they pay for a portion of the equipment you're getting rebates on, so they should get that back. So that's an ineligible scope. So that is also something that we
It's
thought.
weird that they can have a stance on that, but you get hit here for the sales tax, which goes to the Commonwealth out of the money that they reimburse for the construction of the building. Does that make any sense, or
Well, I
is
think
that just me?
ultimately that sales tax, that shouldn't have been, that's something that we should have caught that. That shouldn't have been applied. Ultimately.
I just find it strange.
So it shouldn't have been applied for
Right,
reimbursement.
yeah. It is outdoor, so this is a tax exempt project. So that was either an invoice that was miscoded, or it was $169. I didn't really plug into where that
Well,
cost
no, it
was.
says it's a police detail.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, it could be. It could be one of the other things as well.
Yeah.
I could probably find it if food
Yeah.
gives.
It's all right.
Yeah.
We can dispense with the minutia on these.
Does anyone have any other questions on the cost or the details? Okay. Moving on, the next few pages is something we've reviewed on previous meetings. So this is all the change orders to date, what was found eligible, what was found ineligible. Again, this information kind of backs up some of the costs on previous slides. Again, not sure if we want to revisit this. Again, this should be
Old news.
old news. I do want to note that I did ask, I asked the MSBA if they could, the last page references Consigli construction. In case people are confused, that should be revised. Doesn't change anything. It was just incorrect.
I noticed in one of the documents they called this a vocational school too.
Yeah, the header to the email.
Yeah.
Boilerplate.
We got a lot of schools going. I don't want to do them.
Yeah.
The next two pages, the last two pages, summarize just where we stood with original contract for AI3, the total value of their amendments, and how much of it was actually spent in invoices. So we had $3.5 million in invoices for AI3, and we paid 3.47, leaving a balance of 36,000, and I think those were unused geotech, and I think some of it was unused to the well drum. We didn't spend all of that, so we just project closed, but I just want to outline that. And I think this is where a good majority of the duplicate costs, that if you see note C, some of these costs got, a lot of these invoices got duplicated. And the last page is the same thing with Skanska. So original contract, total amendments, additional services consulting, and then the total paid. So a balance of 6.986 in that, and those budget lines from the contracts you guys executed. So that's the package. So ultimately, I don't know if you guys have any questions or comments.
You're confident with everything that's on here?
Yes. So I mean, I think I looked through it, and then we sat down and looked through it in more detail. And I don't know if we would. There's no slam dunk. Let's put it that way. There's no cost in here that I can look at and say that should be eligible. We should definitely submit to try to get reimbursement. There are some things that I would like to see have been eligible, but the MSBA has in the past and in documentation said that this was a non-eligible cost. So I don't know if we were to stop the process, if I can no on that box, I don't know if it would change the determination.
And would we have any new documentation that we could submit at this
No.
point? If we, so it would just be resubmitting documentation that we already have?
Yeah, I just be hoping that the documentation, maybe a different conversation would change their position. There's one in particular that I still kind of irks me, but it's one that we've known about for a while. It was one of the BRRs where we moved funds and we didn't participate in the funds that moved related to our services. But we had that conversation then. They determined at the time we did the BRR that it was not going to be eligible.
And that was the document that I sent around later, after the original documents, showing those.
But besides that, I mean, most of the, as you can see by the summary, most of it was related to vacancy. Other big chunks were FF&E, technology, things that we knew about. So I'm fairly confident with what we have and the 58.5%.
Okay.
Any other questions? Rick, did you have anything?
I have.
Mr. Gay?
No, I was gonna say, after 4 years of work, is there money left over that we can go out to dinner?
Yeah, McDonald's.
Only 4, Larry. 7. 7. But who's counting? Anyway.
7 years?
Yeah, 2010.
That's a
September
long shot.
2010.
I thought our
September.
first meeting was in August, wasn't it September?
I think, well, we'll go back. Who's the historian?
It was, that's what started.
Have you really?
This project,
Went on the interview, June
I started on the first
That.
day of regionalization.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay. Good. All right, so there's no question of this. I didn't see a motion to accept the audit as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye. Oh, I think we have to do roll call.
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, the roll call. Mr.
Robert Ankle, aye.
John Gallagher, aye.
Julie Ramos Gagliardi, aye.
Steve Carteret, aye.
Susan Russell, aye. Stephanie Field, aye.
Jeff Studover, aye.
Lindsay Alvarez, aye.
Larry Gay, all right.
Rich Fenstermaker, aye. And Mr. Pierce?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any other matters of public input for tonight?
Could I just ask one question?
Certainly.
Has Lindsay calculated what our actual out-of-pocket costs will be? With the numbers that I had, I calculated it, I think, to be $33,109,646.
Very good, Rick. That's what I have too.
That's
a match.
We thought you were home sleeping.
Okay. Good. Good. Okay, so we have, anything else? Nothing else. Okay, so I think the board meeting is going to be on
October 25th,
October 25th in the morning,
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock in the morning. And after that, I guess we have to come back together and take the check and go spend it. Or accept the check. And I guess at that point we determine if it's just disbanding the committee or we want to go on for.
I think that's got to be done through town meeting.
Yeah, is that right?
Has to be
I don't
done
know
through
the
town meeting.
process.
We're all appointed through town meeting, so this
No,
has
we're
to be.
appointed through the school committee.
Is anyone going to be attending that meeting?
Mr. Morrison will be there, and
I will be there.
I will hope to be there. I'll hope to be there.
So there will be one other meeting when that is.
Yeah, it'll be one meeting, and there'll be dinner after that. How's that?
Yay.
Or at least
Sounds
drinks.
right.
Or at least drinks. Okay, with that, thank you, Mike. And I know Mike and Lindsay worked on a lot of these things over the last few days, ironing out these last few pieces, and appreciate all the work that you've all done, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Ankle.
Ankle, aye.
Gallagher, aye.
Gagliardi, aye.
Carteret, aye.
Field, aye.
Studover, aye.
Lindsay, aye.
Larry Gay, all right.
Fenstermaker, aye, and Mr. Pierce.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, good night, enjoy your time out there, Rick.
Bye, Rick.